This Shabbat is called Shabbat Hagadol, the big Sabbath. And I have really good news for you. Historically, it was the Shabbat, that is the Shabbat right before Passover, and historically, the rabbi gave a really long sermon. I'm not. That's the good news. It is tradition on Shabbat HaGadol to give a sermon, to give a teaching on the laws of Passover, and even on Shabbat afternoon to begin to review the Haggadah in preparation. So tomorrow afternoon, everyone can take out their Haggadah, sit with a cup of tea, and get ready. Tonight, not such a long sermon, but in the spirit of Passover, I'm going to ask you 4 questions. You don't have to answer them out loud, but 4 questions to give you to reflect on to prepare for Passover. The first, how do you get to the seder? No, I don't mean Google Maps or Waze. I don't even mean airplane, car, or train. Our ancestors left Egyptian slavery through the Sea of Reeds. Tradition says they left through the narrow places. The Hebrew for Egypt is Mitzrayim, and the rabbis play on that, and they say it's Mitzarim, literally from the narrow places. And in the Seder, we chant Hallel, Psalms of praise, and we sing Min HaMetzar Karaticha Ya. God, I call to you from the narrow places. We are, of course, at the Seder supposed to, really obligated to see ourselves as if we left Egypt. Each of us is to see ourselves as if we left Egypt. So that mitzvah commands us, it challenges us to ask ourselves, what is the narrow place I depart from as I make the journey, the exodus to freedom? So question number 1, think about, what is your narrow place? Ask yourself, perhaps, am I leaving the constricting concerns of COVID times? Or am I departing the narrowness of aloneness and beginning to return to community? Am I exiting times of physical or emotional worry to free myself for joy, learning, exploring? Or any number of other questions. We ask ourselves, what are our narrow places? And then ask ourselves, what do I call out or cry out? To whom? Perhaps we cry out to God. Perhaps we call out a song of joy. I'm finally celebrating Passover in person. It's no mean feat. Or perhaps a call of greeting to family and friends who we will see perhaps face-to-face, perhaps still through technology, but without masks. So the first question is, how do you get to the Seder? Each of us gets there through our own narrow places, and we do so by reflecting on that. Reflect on your own constraints, your own narrow places. They're different for each of us, but we all have them. And then allow yourself to depart the narrow place, to open to the breath of freedom. That's the first question. The second question, somewhat redundant, is what's your question? We're all familiar with those 4 questions, right? It says in Exodus, you should tell your son, I'll say your child, when they ask, tell them about the Exodus from Egypt. And we just assume that those 4 questions have been here for all time. Here's the secret. They've changed. Depending on which Talmud, the Babylonian Talmud or the Palestinian Talmud, one Talmud has 4 questions, one has 3. They're not exactly what we say today. There's one about roasted and boiled meat. We don't have that one. And then there's some other ones that are familiar. So this teaches us that we have room to change. Sure, we should still say or sing the 4 questions, and it doesn't have to be the youngest person. In fact, the rabbis teach that if you think the kid's not going to ask, they're not going to ask, you need to do it if you're leading the Seder. You know, those 4 questions that talk about unleavened bread versus leavened bread, bitter herbs versus all regular veggies, dipping twice and reclining. Zaman ishtana. All of those questions point out to the ultimate question. Man ishtana halayla hazeh mikol halaylot. How is this night different from all other nights? But don't stop at that 4. Keep going. The rabbis taught that we should leave room for other questions and create an atmosphere that supports questions. Now, we could be humbled in that. My cousin Ryan, now a PhD from the University of Chicago, and he was 4, when I opened the door for questions many years ago, asked why we had place cards. There was that. But there are so many other opportunities. Rabbi Neil Gilman, of blessed memory, the professor at the Jewish Theological Seminary and world-renowned theologian, wrote, "The simple recitation of the Haggadah will stimulate questions of many kinds. They may not be in the text, but they will be in the air. Let them emerge. Use them for educational purposes. And don't worry if you can't answer them or you don't answer them." Gilman explains, most significant theological questions have no easy answers. The weight's off. So number 2, I invite you to think this week, what question will you ask at the seder? What question will you encourage others to ask? Number 3, what's your symbol? Over the years, many of us have added symbols to our seder plates. Anyone ever add olives for Israel? Potato peels as we remember Holocaust survivors? My favorites, so many of you know it, the orange and Miriam's cup. Let's go, all hands up. Okay. If not, you're doing them this year. World Jewish and personal events could inspire us to add other symbols. There's been conversation in the recent weeks about adding a sunflower or sunflower seeds to our seder plate, to think of those in Ukraine who are praying for security, health, peace. And I offer another symbol in that vein. Some of you may recall that during the years in which Soviet Jews were not allowed to leave the Soviet Union, some of us added a 4th matzah. Traditionally, there are 3 on the Seder table, called the matzah of hope. This year, we might do that again. Unfortunately, we need to. We might add that 4th matzah, call it the matzah of hope, and lift it as we say the words, halach ma'anya, let all who are hungry come and eat. You can add that matzah. You can say we lift this matzah to think about all of those Jewish and non-Jewish in Ukraine and all those under attack. You can also print out a reading that's on our website, or as you leave the sanctuary this evening, if you're in the sanctuary, Todd Brayman has copies of that reading that's on our website. And you can read a piece that makes a connection between that matzah and those in Ukraine. Other ways to keep Ukraine in our hearts at the Seder could be to set an empty glass or an empty chair and to lift up why you've done that. And of course, there's always the let all who are hungry come and eat, to invite those who don't have a place to join you for Seder. Many of you I know do just that. And of course, if you've never added an orange or a Miriam's cup, it's time. The orange symbolizes that men and women have equal opportunity and roles in Judaism. And Miriam's cup lifts up the role of Miriam, partnering with Moses, guiding our ancestors through the wilderness. Tradition teaches that a well of water traveled with our ancestors and nourished them because of Miriam's merit. It is time to add them both. So number 3 is, what is your symbol? What will you add this year? And number 4, how will you open the door with skepticism or hope? You know, at the end of the Seder, we opened the door for Elijah. That's usually when the kids with shpilkis are really happy to get up and open the door, some adults too. Elijah enters our ritual. It's not always been in the Passover Seder, but enters our ritual in around the 12th century after the Crusades. You may recall that the Crusades were not good times for Jews, and many were killed. So Elijah is a symbol of hope. Elijah will be the forebearer, the forerunner of the Messiah. When Elijah comes, our world will be redeemed. It will be peaceful. The problems will be gone. So Elijah's role, if Elijah comes, then our world's in a lot better place than it is today. So Elijah entered our liturgy at a time when our Jewish people needed hope. The tradition is that Elijah actually never died. We read about him in Tanakh. He went up to the heavens in a fiery chariot, and he returns to earth at these liminal or transitional times. At a bris, at the end of Shabbat, right? We sing Eliyahu Hanavi at Havdalah, and at the close of the seder. Elijah's appearance in our homes at this moment celebrates our achievement of redemption. But we know our world has not yet been redeemed. We have many problems still to fix. And so we remind ourselves of the unfinished work by opening the door and by singing Eliyahu Hanavi. This year, could certainly be a year that we say, I'm not going to open the door. The world is too dark and has too many problems. We could scoff and make fun of this ritual. Or we can open the door with hope and with an explicit verbal commitment to better our world with our own actions. And so I ask you, how will you open the door? As I leave you with these 4 questions, particularly that last one, I leave you with inspiring words from my dear friend and colleague and Rabbi Daniel's teacher, my teacher, Rabbi Aaron Pankin, the late professor and president of the Hebrew Union College. Rabbi Pankin wrote 4 years ago, echoing the Haftarah of this Shabbat, the Haftarah of the prophet Malachi. He wrote, this festival of Passover reminds us that even the darkest times can come to an end through the action of young and old, divine and human, working in concert. This Pesach, even as we rejoice at our redemption so long ago, let us redouble our efforts to ensure that the redemption we seek today does not elude our grasp. Indeed, may we, in partnership with one another and in partnership with the divine, do just that. Let us ensure that the redemption we seek today does not elude our grasp. Let us make it happen together. Ken Yehi Ratzon, may this be God's will and ours. Shabbat Shalom.